As we're live streaming from C1, we're okay, right? In terms of where we are in Sadhana Panchakam. So today I was hoping to get into the very ending of verse number 2, where we will see Brahmaikaksha martyatam shruti shiro vakyam samakarnyatam, and maybe head into the next verse. But as usual, let's start with our opening prayers, and then we will chant the first 2 verses. We'll do lead and repeat style for all of them so we get a little bit more practice, and then we'll chant both the verses together. Right? So with that, Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Vakratunda Mahakaya Surya Koti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kuru Me Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada. Saraswati Namastubhyam Varade Kamarupini Vidyarambham Karishyami Siddhir Bhavatu Me Sada. Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Gurureva Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. All right, so please repeat after me for the first verse. Vedo nityam adhiyatam tadudidam karma svanushtiyatam tene shasya vidhiyatam apachitihi kamye matistyajyatam papogaf paridhuyatam bhavasukhe doshonusandhiyatam atmecha vyavasiyatam nijagrihat turnam vinirgamyatam. Now for verse 2. Sangat satsu vidhiyatam bhagavato bhaktir dridadhiyatam shantyadif parichiyatam dridataram karmashu santyajyatam sadvidvanupasripyatam pratidhinam tatpaduka sevyatam brahmaikaksharam shruti shiro vakyam samakarnyatam. So now let's go back to verse 1 and 2 and we'll chant it together. Vedo nityam adhiyatam tadudidam karma svanushtiyatam tene shasya vidhiyatam apachitihi kamye matistyajyatam papogaf paridhuyatam bhavasukhe doshonusandhiyatam atmecha vyavasiyatam nijagrihat turnam vinirgamyatam sangat satsu vidhiyatam bhagavato bhaktir dridhadhiyatam shantyadif parichiyatam dridataram karmashu santyajyatam sadvidvanupasripyatam pratidhinam tatpaduka sevyatam brahmaikaksharamardhyatam shrutishiro vakyam samakarnyatam. All right. So in these last couple of sections, what we have seen is once we have qualified ourselves in Vanaprastha with having all of the virtues, we've cultivated the virtues such as Shantyadi, Shama, Dhamma, Uparama, Titiksha, Shraddha, and Samadhana. Then, because of that purification and single-pointedness, these are always the two main qualities we have to keep focusing on until we reach the end. Chitta Shuddhi and Chitta Ekagrataha. All desires eschew all desire-ridden actions. All kama karma are given up. And at the end of this Vanaprastha stage, I have now entered sannyasi. This is when I take shelter at the perfect master, Satguru. We saw that last time, that there are so many different types of gurus, but Satguru is the one that we're really seeking, because he is the one that is qualified to give us the highest of the highest knowledge, Atma Jnana itself. So we prostrate ourselves to him and we worship him daily. We worship him constantly and serve his lotus feet. That is the image that is given, that we, tat paduka sevyatam. Paduka is the feet. Because we are remembering what he stands upon. His greatness and his height only comes from on which he stands upon. And that is nothing less than Atma itself. Brahma Nishta is his state. He is well established in his true identity, and it is to that feet that I worship. Then we had come very close to this in the last time we were here. The next one is Brahmaikakshara Martyatam. That worship that Om, which is the immutable. Immutable means, I had to sometimes look up the English dictionaries as well. They use big words, old English words. Immutable, something that cannot be mutated, something that cannot change. That means that it was, is, and will always be and never change. What is that entity that qualifies this definition? Immutable. This is when we take up the Omkara Upasana. Omkara Upasana. So in the past, when I say past, I'm saying in these stages of progression during Vanaprastha, we were purifying and concentrating our mind through japa, puja, and other upasanas. Even Gayatri mantra is held all the way up till the very end. In those exercises, we have to use the nama and rupa as an alambana. Okay, nama means name. Rupa is form. Alambana is that support system. So I think of a crutch, right? In order to help me walk along and strengthen my legs, I use that crutch to get there along the way. So upasanas where we find an Ishta Devata, we concentrate our mind on what his form is like, what does he look like, what deeds have he done, and constantly invoke that image and bhava inside by calling out his name. So we use both the nama and rupa to find support in helping the mind concentrate on Bhagavan. Now, these upasanas also have results. They are meant for sharpening and purifying the mind. The mind is involved in this world here. It interacts with the world outside, so the result is within this world. But now, as we look at this progression, we have now given up the world. There's nothing more for me to find out about this world. I want something that is immutable, something that never changes. What is that? This means I'm ready to step beyond this world. Therefore, any upasanas that give results within this world are no longer useful to me now. Give me something I can do to start reaching beyond this world. Which is why we drop other upasanas and take up this particular upasana called Omkara Upasana. Now, in Shastras or in other ways you might hear this, we go from Saguna Upasana to Nirguna Upasana. You'll hear this as well. Saguna, with qualities. So Bhagavan is like this, he's strong, he's almighty. I'm thinking of Hanumanji because he's right here. And he crossed over Lanka. He was also Sukshma Rupa in front of Sita Devi, but Mahavir in front of Lanka. So I think of all of these qualities, Saha Guna. But now I'm trying to reach for the very substratum. He is without name, without form. Nirguna, without gunas. What is that? That is when we pick up Om as my focus. Now last time we had seen Om is made up of 3 sounds. It is A, U, and Ma. We'd done a funny exercise last time and actually felt, where do these 3 sounds exist as it flows from the lungs to the world outside? A is right here. The lungs are filled up, the vocal cords are open, and that's the only source of sound. So it's at the base. Then as that moves forward, we change our mouth, constrict it a little bit, shape it a little bit, and it becomes U. Then finally, the last set of tools we have are the lips. We close them and let the air continue to flow, the sound continue to flow. U becomes M. Now, these 3 stages of evolution also is reflected in the way the vowels and consonants are laid out in our Shastras. So how many are familiar at least with the basics of Sanskritam letters? Maybe way back in Indian schooling. How about any Indian languages? Hindi, Malayali, or Telugu? It's about similar, right? What's the first letter you learn? A very basic sound. And in the list of the main chunk of consonants, we go through all of them, ka, ka, ga, ga, nga. Then all the way come down to the last varga. Ba, pa, ba, ba. What's the last letter? Ma. So even then they studied the flow of sound. It starts with a, ends with ma. Of course, yesterday when I said this, a couple of them were like, what about yara, lava, shasha? They come after that. yeah. Just go with my analogy here. Those are all still modifications of other uses of the different parts of the mouth. But really speaking, the lips are the last one that we use. Now, these 3 evolutions of sound also represent the evolution of our experience. The way we experience the world, there are also 3 forms. So the most basic or full, right? When we say the vocal cords are used the full, what does that represent? The waking state. The waking state. What does this qualify? Here's the world outside, here are all these objects. That information has to come through my jnanendriyas, the organs of perception, through the 5 senses. It then gets recognized by the mind and intellect, and the full world is engaged with. I see you, you see me, and this is our full waking state. Now, what happens if I were to shut down just the senses? What state are we in now? Dream. Not even full sleep. Dream state. Why? Because the world I create is within my own mind. The mind creates the forest, the mind creates the tiger, mind creates the runner who is running away from the tiger. It is the mind reveling within the mind. This is dream state. So it's somewhere in between. So U is not completely open, it's not completely closed, it's somewhere in the middle. That is why U represents dream state. Finally, when I've had a really good day, or I've worked really hard, or I partied really hard, I fall asleep completely in an instant, and I know nothing. This is the best kind of sleep. The only way I know I had a good sleep is because I had a moment of remembering of falling asleep, and 5 minutes later it feels like I just woke up. I have no idea that I fell asleep for 6 hours. This is the best kind of sleep because neither is the senses available, nor is the mind or intellect available at all either. It has all shut down. Deep sleep state is one of the most interesting things to study. How is it that I'm still me when my mind and intellect and senses are all shut off? And here's a brain teaser. I still haven't figured out the answer for this question. Is it that when we try to wake up with an alarm, is it that we are waking up the mind and intellect that then hears the alarm sound and therefore I wake up? Or does the senses hear the sound and then it wakes up my mind and intellect? Which one comes first? Waking or hearing the alarm? The most interesting question. I still can't figure it out. What wakes me up in the morning? So if there's any state to really boggle with and challenge and question, deep sleep state is the most interesting one. Because why is this important? Is because we're still coming back to the Omkara Upasana. And we say here, worship Om as the immutable, something that will never change. Okay, so now if we look at these three states, we are constantly flowing back and forth between these three. Deep sleep, dream, and waking, and none of them last forever. So then what is that thing that remains constant and unchanging through all of these three worlds of experience? Another thing is waking, dream, and deep sleep is comprehensive and accommodating for all forms of experience I can have. There's no other fourth state that I know of that was missed out in waking, dream, and deep sleep. So though all of them are changing, then what is that which is not changing? This is when we come to that question. So when we do Omkara Upasana, there is a fourth element that we tend to forget about. The silence between two Oms. So just as a practice, Om, Om. What has been constant between all three of those moments? Silence. And we don't even recognize it. It was there before the Om started, it's there during the Om chanting, and it's there after the Om was completed. That is never changing. That is that immutable. How can I come to know what is the very nature of that immutable state? This is now the question that forms in the mind when we're constantly chanting Om again and again and again. What is that which remains unchanging? Now, interestingly, if you look at the sequence of steps in verse number 2, after we worship Guru's feet, we do the upasana of Om, and then we start listening to the depths of the declarations of the Upanishads. Shruti Shiro Vakyam Samakarnyatam comes after this. Huh? I thought we learned the Upanishads and then start doing Om Japa so that we understand what we're doing. Meaning, this shows how the mind can become so sharp that if we purify our mind, chitta shuddhi and chitta ekagrataha, it will naturally come to ask the question, what is that which is unchanging? Show me that. Then we're able to ask the right question to the Guru, and therefore the upadesha of what the Upanishads are saying is can be spoken of. Because if you look at any of the Upanishad, does it just start with the Guru talking? Hari Om everyone, today we will start with today's lesson on the Upanishads. It always starts with a student asking the question, and always asking the right question. That makes that student qualified to even ask for that Atma Jnana, because they have observed and studied and made their mind so subtle that asking the question, what is that which is unchanging, so significant to that person. When we're out about in the world doing our own thing and somebody comes and asks, have you not asked the question, what is that which is unchanging? You're like, dude, why? It doesn't even matter. Help me fix my job. Meaning that student has to grow in their understanding. That student has to become subtler in their thinking to even come to understand what is the significance of that question. That is why we do Omkara Upasana first, and then the Guru starts giving Upadesha. Now, I had mentioned that other upasanas get dropped. Other upasanas get dropped, including Gayatri Mantra. Gayatri Mantra is used to make the mind literally brilliant. Gayatri Mantra is that which is used to worship Surya Bhagavan, the brilliance, effulgence in the form of Surya. And we say, Surya, you represent my mind. May I become as brilliant as you. Please make my mind refined. This was the purpose of Gayatri Mantra. But at this point, we drop it. And some students may ask, why? Why do I have to drop it? What's the proof? And the person who I was studying had a really interesting side point that I wanted to share here. He said there are some things that cannot be determined by our intellect, and we have to come to accept it. There are some things that our intellect cannot determine, and we have to come to accept that. He gave the analogy of either a telescope or a microscope. The microscope is meant to magnify things and see things on an almost molecular level. Can you demand that microscope to show me the galaxies? No. That equipment is not designed for long-distance viewing. At the same time, a telescope, which can see so far off, demand it to show me the nucleus of a cell. It can't do that. It's designed to do only certain things. So in the same way, what is the intellect designed to do? The intellect is connected to the senses. The senses pick up data from the world outside. When we say data, we think of nama and rupa. I see this carpet being defined by these borders. It is this particular color. It has this particular texture of the carpet. This is wood. This is a stage. I find the limitations that differentiate it from other things. That is what the senses give to the intellect. The intellect digests that information and says, this is that. That is this. It defines and delineates. So I'll give you another example that really honed in on why the intellect is all about defining and delineating. If I say, point out the red cow to me. Red cow. Okay, even if you take the word cow, cow implies it's not any other animal. It's not a tiger, it's not a dog, it's not a rooster, nothing else. It's just a cow. Now, that separates and delineates all animals to just the cow. I also said red cow. So it can't be a cow that has black and white spots. It can't be a cow or bison in Africa or something. You're getting even more specific. This is the pattern and habit of the intellect. It is not this, it is this. You take a group, you find some specificity. You eliminate that which it is not. So you're constantly drawing lines around things, and that helps me identify and navigate this world. Now, what is the original subject matter we're looking at? That which is all-encompassing, that is forever. There is one without a second. That is the most famous and important definition of Brahman. Ekam advayam, one without a second. Now, how is the intellect that only functions in delineating and separating, how can it identify what is Brahman without a second that limits it? Okay, we're getting into some deep philosophy here. If I were to take a square, right, and I were to cut a line in the middle of it, I have section A and section B. I can only identify A because there is a second that limits section A. Now I can say, okay, that's A, that's B. If I were to remove that line, can I still identify A? Well, I don't know where A stops and where B begins. I can't figure out the lines. That's exactly the problem the intellect goes through when it's trying to identify what is that which has no second. There is no delineator or limiting factor. So the intellect gets stuck. How am I supposed to identify that which has no limits, that which has no changes at all to even point at it? That is why we say at some point we have to transcend the mind and intellect itself. So the Upanishads, understanding that this intellect cannot discover what Brahman is on its own, Upanishads are all techniques to help the mind transcend itself so that we may come to understand Brahman without the intellect. So the Upanishad is also known as that which indicates alaukika. Loka, that's familiar word, right? Loka means world. Alaukika means that which is beyond this world or outside this world. This is the main Vishaya of the Upanishads. Now, sorry, I'm just skipping around in my notes a little bit here. Okay. So, when we saw the Omkara Upasana, sorry, I'm really losing my place in my notes here because I went a little too fast. Okay. So, we saw in this part, after Omkara Upasana, Shruti Shiro Vakyam Samakarnyatam. After having understood this conundrum, this problem of trying to reach a place where the intellect cannot reach, that is when I go to the Guru and says, please give me that Upadesha. What is Brahman and how can I understand it when I'm limited by my intellect? So, Shruti Shiro. Shruti is that Vedas. Shiro is the Shira, the head. So, here it's not just saying listen to the Vedas, unlike the very first sentence, Vedo Nityam Adhyatam. Here we've become very specific. Shruti Shiro, meaning the culmination, the main point, the last bit of information we were working our way towards. Listen to that very well. So if we look at the Vedas, first we have Karma Kanda portion that dictates what we must do. This is to give us Chitta Shuddhi, purity of the mind. Purity meaning I am without an ego, its desires and its attachments to the world outside. I've worked through all of that, I'm done with it. Karma Kanda helps us, and it's a big portion because it's a lot of work. Once I've graduated to that, then I move to Upasana Kanda. Upasana is all the different rituals that we have to help sharpen the mind so we can hold on to one thought at a time. Om Namah Shivaya. Can I literally sit in that name and not move anywhere? That's a super control we have over the intellect. So Upasana Kanda helps us develop Chitta Shuddhi. But there's still one last portion left where we're headed towards, and that is Vedanta. Veda Anta, the very end of the Vedas, this is where we were going towards. In other words, it is the Upanishads. Now, in these Upanishads, we find the Vakyam. Shruti Shiro Vakyam. Vakyam means statements. And as soon as you hear Upanishad and you hear Vakyam, what's the standard sentence that comes to our mind? Phrase? Mahavakyams are found in Upanishad. Maha means these great statements. Not because they're really big. Maha also means big. But they're in fact really short and really small. But they are of utmost importance and significance. These Mahavakyams. So let me ask you, how many Mahavakyas do we have in our Shastras? Well, what is the most common things you've heard of? How many Mahavakyas are there? 1? 4? Okay, 4 seems to be a common. Any more than that? Maybe, maybe not. The person I was listening to is saying 1 is a wrong answer. 4 is a wrong answer. Many is a wrong answer. What? What do you mean? All of the above apply. Why? So now we have to understand what is that Mahavakya. What is the purpose of a Mahavakya. Mahavakyas have 3 parts to it. So let's take the example of Tat Tvam Asi. I'm sure everyone has heard this statement, the most popular Mahavakya. Tat Tvam Asi. Tat literally means that. I don't know yet what we're referencing, it just means that. Tvam means you. Asi means is. That you is. That's a direct translation. But what it's saying is, that is you. You and that are one and the same. So let's take that as a formula. There is, and let me clarify, that references Bhagwan, Ishvara, that macrocosm. That Ishvara is you, this individual. Tat represents the macrocosm. Tvam represents the microcosm. And Asi is the equating factor saying macrocosm is microcosm. They are one and the same. This is the formula of every Mahavakya. Now, why is it? So that's one. When I say there's only one Mahavakya, it's one because it's the same formula again and again and again. There's no other message that's being given in any of the Upanishad. There's only one statement that is said again and again. So why has 4 become very popular? Because how many Vedas do we have? 4. And there is a select Mahavakya that is chosen to represent those Vedas. So for Rig Veda, it comes from Taittiriya Upanishad. It is Prajnanam Brahma. Prajnanam Brahma translates to, this consciousness is verily that conscious principle. This is the illumination power. This consciousness is verily that consciousness. Again, same from it. Tat Tvam Asi is still there. Then Yajurveda comes from Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, and there the statement is Aham Brahmasmi. Aham Brahma Asmi. Same formula. This I is the same as that self, and it is one and the same. From Samaveda, it comes from Chandogya Upanishad, and this is the famous one, Tat Tvam Asi, so I don't need to say anymore. Then Atharva Vedas comes from Mandukya Upanishad, Ayam Atma Brahma. This Atma is that Brahman. Atma Brahma Ayam. This and that are one and the same. So these are the 4 famous ones. But then you look at other Upanishad, literally any other Upanishad, there will always be a Mahavakya there. So like for example, Kena Upanishad, you have, I have to remember these. From Kena Upanishad, Tadeva Brahmatma Vidhi. Tat eva Brahma Atma Vidhi. Know that, okay, let me start with the direct translation. That Brahman thou art, know this. Vidhi, know it. That Brahman thou art, know this. From Kathopanishad, Etad Vaitat. The point I'm trying to make here is the purpose of Upanishads is to bring us to this formula. So there's only one message that the Upanishads are trying to say, so 1 is the right answer. If you want to look at it from every Vedas, there are 4. But if you want to look at it, the literal number of Mahavakyas there are so many I can't even count. This is the majesty of our Vedas. Sure, you want 1? I got 1. You want 4? I got 4. You want many? I got many. Go ahead and chew on it as much as you want. So long as your mind constantly revels on these Mahavakyams, that much I will give you. It's like a mother. You know, whatever that child needs, she's ready to provide. Now, Samakarnyatam. Samakarnyatam. There is Sama plus A plus Karna. They had to put 2 prefixes, so you really got to pay attention. Sama means all, completely, holistically. A means very well, acutely. So listen with such intent that you don't miss the main point of what's being taught. You don't miss what's being taught. So, Samadhanena shruyatam. Listen with alert, and we are able to come to the central point. The central point is Jiva Brahma Aikyam. There is that oneness between Jiva and Brahma. Now, when we study the Vedas, we tend to get distracted by all of the information that Vedas provide. When it comes to the world outside, there are many Shastras that are available. If we even come to the main sciences of our Shastras, there's so much investigation that's being done. And today in our academic realms, we come up with the weirdest questions to study the Vedas. Did you know that they referenced nail clippers in the middle of Mahabharata? Okay, so who cares? No, I created a whole PhD on this very statement. There are others that can investigate what are the occurrences of the 5 elements and how all have they been referenced in the Vedas. You can create a whole book on that. Or even if you want to be more refined, they say, I want to study the Devatas. How and when did Indra Devata exist in the Puranas? What are all of his stories? How is he involved in all? You can get lost. In fact, one of the Upanishads is called Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Why? Because it is a big forest, this Upanishad. You can get lost. And this is also the sattvic ego that we can get into. I have refined my mind. I have no more desires. I've given up all my responsibilities. My only sole goal is to stay attentive to the Upanishad. I shall study it for the rest of my life. And what are you studying? Nail clippers in Mahabharata. So we have to stay focused on why was I studying this in the first place. That is why it says Shruti Shiro. The head and point, and the most important thing about the Shrutis, listen to that well. Now, once this has been learnt, we have heard this, do we not hear many stories? Upon hearing the words of the Guru, he gained realizations right then and there. It happened in an instant. His mind was so pure that he didn't need anything else. That Shravanam was enough. Now, how many times has it occurred with how many students? A rare few. The next steps after Shravana become the most important for the majority of us. So we shall see verse number 3 and learn the very first sentence of that. So let's learn to chant verse number 3. Please repeat after me. Vakyartasya vicharyatam Shruti Shirav Pakshas Samashriyatam Dustarkat Suviramyatam Shrutimatas Tarko Nusandhiyatam Brahmasmiti Vibhavyatam Aharahar Garvav Parityajyatam Dehe Hammati Rujyatam Buddha Janai Vadav Parityajyatam. Okay, so we'll chant this one together. Vakyarthasya vicharyatam Shruti Shirav Pakshas Samashriyatam Dustarkat Suviramyatam Shrutimatas Tarko Nusandhiyatam Brahmasmiti Vibhavyatam Aharahar Garvav Parityajyatam Dehe Hammati Rujyatam Buddha Janai Vadav Parityajyatam. Alright, so beginning from the last part of verse number 2, this ends the Shravana part of Sannyasi Ashram. Shravana part of Sannyasi Ashram. So then naturally, we have the next 2 steps that come up. Mananam and Nididhyasanam. Mananam and Nididhyasnam. The very first statement, Vakyarthasya vicharyatam, vichara, is the very indication of Mananam. So Vakya here is that Maha statements, Mahavakyams, that deal with that highest wisdom. And once we listen to it, we may come up with some problems. It doesn't fully digest, it doesn't fully click. Because these statements do not align with the experiences I've had thus far. That and this are one and the same. So then let's investigate what is that and this that we're looking at. There we go. When we look at Tat, Tat references that Bhagwan, that Ishvara. Okay, superficially when I first encounter that, what are the properties of Ishvara? If there are any three words I had to hold on to define who is Bhagwan and what is he like, Sarva Vyapi, Sarva Shakti, Sarva Gnya. Gnya, Shakti, Vyapi, just to make it simpler. He is all-knowing, all-powerful, and everywhere. These are the properties of Tat. Okay, then what about Tvam? Who am I? Can Sarva Shakti, Sarva Gnya, and Sarva Vyapi apply to me? Definitely not. I definitely don't know everything. I definitely don't have all the abilities, and I am stuck in this body, mind, and intellect. I am not everywhere. So now we've just heard Tat Tvam Asi. You and that are one and the same. Bhagavan, I cannot be you. In fact, I have a funny story to tell here. When Swamiji was living next door, and there would be people from Christian faith that I think it's their standard practice to knock on doors. Have you heard the good word of our Lord and Savior and all that? They try to come and ask Swamiji to convert to Christianity. I think he's had enough people come up to him, try to convert him, that I think one day he got a little snarky, where he opened the door saying, "Your Lord and Savior Jesus, I am God." And they're all shocked and they walked away. Technically, he didn't say the wrong statement. Mahavakyam tattvam asi. You are that Ishvara. But the thing is, because it's a good example, because when we first hear these statements, we are just as shocked as those people. What do you mean I'm Ishvara? How can this statement be true? When that doubt comes in my mind, then we know that we're not those exceptions in the stories. Just because I heard Tattvam Asi, suddenly I become enlightened and realized. Why? Because it actually doesn't make sense to us. Therefore, we have to start Mananam process. How can this be true? So we have to go beyond those properties. So this is when we looked at the Guru, not only is he Brahmanishta who knows it, but he also has command over the Shrutis. Shrutis in the Upanishad now give all the different techniques in which to get the mind to understand why Tattvam Asi is true. So, we have to start thinking a little bit deeper. Let's take a couple examples. In our science, especially in physics, isn't there a statement saying matter and energy are one and the same? Matter and energy are one and the same. A novice physicist who enters that field, who has gone through elementary school, they say, how is that true? Matter has certain properties, energy has certain properties, and yet how is it that the two of them are equated? Who would be our reference? Who would be our guru in this physics field? Einstein. E equals mc squared is his formula. Look, the origin of the energy that gets modified in certain ways then expresses as matter, but matter and energy are one and the same. So you can do that in science. How is it modified? How does these properties transform into those properties? We start thinking and studying, and the entire field of physics revolves around that. That is Mananam in a way. When we look then at who is Ishvara and who am I, the inquiry has to begin now. So there's I'll have to bring again the most famous person who studied Tvam aspect, Tvam Pada. The most famous guru that I can think of is Ramana Maharshi ji. He even has a book, a biography on him, and what's the title of that book? Who Am I? Because any person that came to him, he would constantly be asking this question. Someone said, this was during the 1940s, during World War II, and says, Guru, you have to leave this place. The Japanese are going to come. They're coming to, Chennai, and they'll bomb this place. You have to leave. And what was his question? On whom is the bombing going to fall upon? On you? Who are you? Even something so worldly, he would always come to this question saying, who are you? Okay, give me some, another example. There was apparently a British woman who came to him during this time, and she said, I'm having lots of problems in my workplace with my family. I need your guidance and I need your help. I've read all about you and I've come to appreciate who you are and I want to learn from you. So Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi says, I need an introduction. Who are you? So she said, well, this is my name. And he's like, this is my name. I am the wife of such and such general. And he said, stop. I asked you who you are. You're stating to me what your relationships are. You said you are a wife. This was a name that was given to you, but you're not telling me who you are. So then she tried again. Okay, I am a daughter. I have 2 sons. Stop. You're again telling me who you're related to. Then she tried again, but hesitated. She was about to say, well, I can't say I'm a Britisher. I can't say I'm a woman. How do I start defining who I am? Suddenly, she fell silent and didn't know how to answer that question. This is what Ramana Maharshi keeps pushing us to think. Who exactly are you? So this reminded me of a verse that comes in Bhaja Govindam in the very beginning. This is only verse 8 or so out of 30, where it says, Kate kanta kaste putraha samsare yamativa vichitraha kasya tvam kaha kuta ayataha tatvam chintaya tadiha bhrataha. Famous, kasya tvam kaha. So the translation of this, who is your wife? Who is your son? Supremely wonderful indeed is this samsara. Of whom are you? From where have you come? O brother, think of the truth here again and again. Who exactly are you? So start asking that question to yourself again and again and again. Who are you? Am I this body? What are all the traits of this body? I am this limited, arms, head, hair, whatever stage in growth I'm in. Am I my mind? Am I my intellect? Constantly, I have to start separating, is that truly me? Now, the most important thread of thinking that we have to hold on to guide this investigation is, we cannot be what we cannot be without. We cannot be what we cannot be without. So let's go back to our 3 states of experience: waking, dream, and deep sleep state. We saw that from going from waking state to dream state, what shut down? The senses. So I can be without my senses then. Okay. Then go from dream state to deep sleep state. What shut down? The mind and intellect. And yet I seem to have this feeling that I'm still me. Yesterday, 2024 me is still 2025 me. How is it that I remained? So I cannot be my senses. I cannot be my mind and intellect. Then who the heck am I? Where is my identity coming from? So this is called the neti process. Na iti. I am not this, I am not this, I am not this. This is the true process of mananam. Not only do we hear these statements, but anything and everything that comes in my view of experience Try to determine, is that who I am? Can I continue to exist without it? If I can continue to exist without it, then that is not me. So I start removing all of those things. Another line of exercise in this way is, okay, if I think I'm this body, mind, and this body, let's just start with the body. How am I this body? What is this body made of? You can go into science field and say, okay, you're made of the elements. Or you can follow the Shastra line of thinking, you're made of the 5 elements. Okay, if I'm made of the 5 elements and I die, what happens to those 5 elements? It goes back into the environment outside. So it comes and goes, and yet I'm born again and again. Again, this is a big theory that we have to talk about later. But my jivatvam continues from body to body, and there is a vasana portfolio I carry on with me. So my sense of existence continues even after this body drops. So I must be something other than it. So ultimately, in this process of mananam and vichara, is to constantly remove all that I am not. And Shastras help us in following those lines of logic. So, assessing the physical body, Drig Drishya Viveka talks about the worlds of experiences. Kena Upanishad follows the line of looking at the senses. Kena Upanishad, the very question is, Bhagavan, I see objects, the objects dissolve into the senses. The senses, what's behind the senses? The mind. What's behind the intellect? What's behind the mind? It's the intellect. Then what's behind the intellect? Again, we come to that same question. So in different styles, there's so many Upanishads because there are different ways of thinking about it, but all of them are to start helping us pick apart, who am I, who am I, who am I? In the same way, the same vichara has to be done on Bhagwan. Who is Bhagwan? What are his properties underneath all of that? How is he Sarvavyapi? How is he Sarva Shaktiman? How is he Sarvagnya? Where does it come from? Who is he really? The analogy given in Atma Bodha is, this process is like removing the clouds to allow the sun to shine on its own. I don't have to do anything to create light. All I have to do is remove everything that blocks that light. So if I'm not the body, if I'm not the mind, if I'm not these waking states, I'm not these 5 elements, I remove all of it and wait to experience what is left over. So whenever we hear stories about those that are in the seat of meditation, and they say, I am doing nothing. This is the most famous part in Bauddhic Sampradaya of Buddhism. They conclude saying, you are nothing. They have done the process of removing all that they are not, and they come to the conclusion that they are nothing. But even that, our Vedanta says no. Something cannot come from nothing. Something has to be there. It can be misinterpreted into something else, but something has to be there. What is that something? So the seat of meditation, the highest form of meditation is, I remove my identification with all of these layers, remove all of it, and wait to experience that which I already am. Who am I? This is the purpose of mananam and nididhyasanam. So mananam takes a lot of work. Not only are we just intellectually doing the exercise that I'm not this body, mind, and intellect, but I have to start disidentifying with this body, mind, and intellect. And some of the ways that you can tell if you've disidentified is, if the body has pain, can we look at it as if it was this object? Can I look at my pain as an object? Can I view my thoughts as an object? Can I view my ideas as just an object? Can I view my deep sleep state as an object? That's how much we're trying to disidentify with all the things I am not to come to discover who I am. Now, what kind of mind do we need that is able to remove itself? This is why when people come and ask, can we do meditation? I'm like, dude, we're not ready. None of us are ready yet. Let's work on other things. But this is what the Shastras tell us is down the road. Shruti Shiro Vakyam Samakarnyatam. So there's a lot more work to be done in Mananam and Nididhyasanam, and we shall see more of what's in store in verse 3 next week. So with that, thank you so much. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. All right. Thank you so much. Hari Om.